Look at this quality cinematography. And I'm back for day 6 of VEDA 2020. We're currently in my left hand right now because my right hand is holding tea, and the only reason it's that way is because this is the side I put it down on. I was taught to write with my right hand, so that's why I write with my right hand, although I am in the process of trying to teach myself to write with my left hand because fuck you, that's why. So, I mean, while by records I'm right-handed, I'm actually ambidextrous. There's a lot of things that I prefer to do with my left hand because it's just more comfortable to be that way, and I'm very efficient at being able to do things with both hands because my brain just naturally processes it that way. I don't know. I mean, I don't even have a really good reason as to why I'm trying to teach myself how to use my left hand other than the fact that I can. And I know I can because I'm already like I can already write like a toddler with my left hand, so we're getting there. You know, it's just a skill to have, I suppose. And I mean, that was before all this quarantine stuff. It's so weird. There's so many animal sounds right now. I mean, there's still some cars because people are fucking morons, but all I hear are burbs. I hear some owls. Probably heard them earlier. So, I've got my tea. I mean, I had it earlier, but fuck it. I'm drinking it now. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that side profile, because I don't. Fucking no, I don't. Okay. Back to annoying old righty I go. It's because honestly, it's easier trying to balance out the laptop the way I'm sitting. Okay, so Clay, I will address the ghost ship thing. It's just, again, I want to actually tackle that with a little more pre planning than I normally do. It's because I want to refresh my memory. I hate fucking being wrong. Much like the 12th Doctor. Hey. Okay, but you dropped a cluster bomb on day 3, so I'm going to try and deconstruct some of this shit. Not that shit. Let me see. So, one of your first subjects, I think I'll take a crack at. You wanted to know about my first fan connections that served to introduce me to fandom as a source of friendship and camaraderie. Well, I kind of had a glimpse of it on the internet back in the days of BBSs and ICQ and that kind of stuff, but it wasn't. It was still, pardon me, disjointed. It was still. I still didn't really feel like I was a part of a community at that point. It was just, oh, neat. There's other people in other countries that like some of the same things I do. Yay. You know, I talked to a couple of people with Doctor Who and Star Trek and Star Wars and Babylon 5 and fucking everything. Everything sci-fi. But I think the first connections really ended up starting when I started working at Cinema One in Lime Ridge. And I mean, part of specifically what got me that job was my future boss complained to my current boss across the hall that he needed somebody reliable for more hours, and she suggested me. B, I know a lot about movies and certain television shows. Obviously, science fiction is a big thing with me. Mysteries are a big thing with me. But when it comes to movies, I'm all across the board. Like, there's a lot of classic kind of movies, which it's a very broad topic, but that was one of their classifications, was classic. So, you know, I'm really strong with a lot of horror movies. I like a lot of documentaries. You know, I had a pretty good grasp on anime. I'd watched a lot of it at that point. I specifically liked a lot of older movies, so I'm talking about like pre-talkies right into, you know, the Hammer horror stuff of the 70s. So that kind of cinched it, but what really got it is my status as a Britophile. And not even just Doctor Who, but I mean specifically having someone on his team who had an intimate knowledge of the show was a big deal because he didn't have anyone like that. He didn't have anyone that knew all of the shit that I knew about Britcoms and about, you know, a lot of the classic kind of historical dramas and Doctor Who, you know. You know, Red Dwarf. He didn't have anybody that knew anything about this shit. So when he brought me onto the team, you know, it was a big score for him, the prick. But hi Carl. Um, but yeah, I can kind of see where a selfie stick comes in. I'm just gonna interject for a moment because my arms are starting to fucking hurt because I'm lazy. Um, but yeah, starting working at Cinema One, obviously you end up meeting people and you start finding out, hey, other people do kind of like this. And I mean, again, at that point, the percentage of people that were coming in to speak about Doctor Who stuff was still pretty small, and specifically the people who were coming in to talk about the classic stuff with me, you know, that was a significantly minor portion of what I dealt with. I had a lot of the anime people shunted to me because I was really good at finding things for them and knowing exactly what they were talking about. I was also had this weird kind of ability to diagnose those asshats who come in and say, "Yo, I'm looking for this really old movie. It was from like 1980. It's got this guy and he does this thing, and there's this chick and she's got really big boobs and she does this." And I'd go, "Okay, well, it's this, like, I don't know, Jewel of the Nile or whatever." I had a pretty good track record of being able to deal with people like that. But specifically when it comes to fandom, I met my friend Paul working there. I met a lot of friends there, actually. But I met my friend Paul there. And Paul is one of the founding members of the Doctor Who Society of Canada. And I guess he found it refreshing. I'd have to ask him. Maybe I'll do an interview with him at some point. But I guess he kind of found it refreshing and good to find somebody at this goddamn store that knew what they were fucking talking about. Because it's really hard, especially from a fandom that's as old as Doctor Who, to go into a place and look for something and go to talk to people and have their faces fucking go blank or like white with dread for having to try and fucking come up with this shit from us esoteric nerds. But yeah, we ended up becoming friends and bonding over Doctor Who. And then I ended up kind of wandering to my first cons around with him, which I guess I put the picture up in private, but there's a picture from like 2000 and I don't know, a long time ago, of the two of us dressed up as the Ninth Doctor. Both of us have our eyes closed or mostly closed. It's an awful picture, but it's also fucking hilarious. So yeah, I kind of started slipping back into the con world at that point because I'd been out of it for so long and I didn't have any connections at all at that point. And then I just kind of started going to conventions and hanging out at the Doctor Who Society booth. And I made friends with one of the Dalek operators at the time, Chad, who was Dalek Simon. He was one of the... Well, he was the only functional cardboard Dalek. So, actually, the funny thing is that... I don't know if it's still true right now, but Dalek Simon actually held court for a long time in Prowse Pottery here in Hamilton in their front window. Just, being babysat by my friends there. So, I don't know if they've brought him with him, because I know they've moved and they've rebranded a little bit. But, yeah, they had a window Dalek for a long time. The things you know. But, yeah, I kind of hung out and heckled people with Chad, and Chad and I made it a habit of photobombing people, because he would be outside. The booth setup was a little different at that time. There was, they actually had proper, boundary delineations, so there were lines people weren't allowed to cross, so he was kind of guarding those lines, and I helped him just in an unofficial capacity, and I just kind of got to know people like that. I got to know my first friend Justin, related to Doctor who is an 11th Doctor cosplayer and a dear friend to me. I kind of got to know him because he also had a TARDIS console that he was lending to the booth. So I kind of got around to helping guard that as well, and making sure people weren't touching things the way they weren't supposed to, making sure people weren't reefing on levers and stuff, because it was a classic console. I can't remember which one. I think it was a first Doctor console, if my memory serves, but it has been a great many years, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, I kind of just eventually got kind of integrated into the group, and once after the first convention I did, which might have been a fan expo, I'm not sure, but after they realized that I was reliable and I knew my stuff, and they could put me on panels and I'd actually talk about things and not just sit there looking panicked, which is so bizarre to me, okay? I have dreadful performance anxiety when it comes to trying to sing, right? But when I get up and I'm confident in a subject and I know what I'm talking about, I could fucking go on for days. Like, I could sit there and lecture. I could give lectures. I could totally give lectures. If I know what I'm talking about, and I know what I'm talking about, fuck, just set me off. I'll fucking go for it. But yeah, and then I just kind of got integrated into this weird convention family. And as that grew, you know, I met people from other fandoms that I loved, like the Ontario Ghostbusters, who I love dearly. They're all great. They're all family, you know, just like most of the Doctor Who Society. We're family. You know, like the Klingons in Toronto and in Montreal and Ottawa. Great people. The Vikings up there, awesome people. You know, like the Toronto Steampunk Society have kind of adopted me as one of their own. I get to go to their dinners and stuff, which is really sweet. Who else? I know I'm forgetting people. But like, like the 501st. I mean, the 501st and the Rebel Legion are fucking great for the most part. I mean, there's some that are kind of... But, you know, they don't know me. Some people just aren't there to get to know people like that. Some people like to stay in their lane and they don't like to push boundaries out of it. But in that, I got to kind of expound upon all of these different fandoms that I loved, and especially with Doctor Who, because it was so niche here for me. Especially because, I mean, I'm a 1980 baby. So for me, when I was growing up and they started airing Doctor Who fairly frequently on multiple channels, like not just PBS, but YTV very early in the morning and that sort of thing, you know, I didn't have anybody to talk about that. You know, nobody at my school watched Doctor Who. Nobody at any of my schools watched Doctor Who. That was a me thing. And talking about it got the shit beat out of me. And got me browbeat to death about what a fucking nerd I am. So that kind of became a quiet thing. But I mean, there's other stuff beyond that, you know? I mean, there was no merchandise here. It's like every once in a while I'd see, like, somebody had dumped before thrift stores kind of got rated the way they do now for Doctor Who merch. Every once in a while I'd see, like, a Tom Baker annual or something. And there's one I remember I wish I'd gotten my mom to pick it up for me. I'm so mad at myself. Hey, I just saw City Bus. That's rare. But yeah, I guess most of my introduction into being part of a wider fandom and not just being a fan of something in a detached kind of manner was through the Doctor Who Society of Canada. And into that, it's kind of let me open up and find my foot in these other groups, you know? And it just kind of blows my mind that I'm in this place now. And I think I'm going to cut it now, because I think I'm just going to jump right into the next video to talk about that myself. Okay? So, stay tuned for the next one in this marathon of fuckery. Later.